dust is far from settled in Chad. 10 days after the killing on the battlefield of longtime strongman Idriss Déby, more protests in the capital against the coup that put Deby's son at the head of a transitional military council. We'll get a live update, ask about the deadly crackdown on those banned demonstrations Tuesday, and the firm condemnation from former colonial power France, whose president traveled last Friday to N'Djamena for Deby's funeral, and who cannot afford to see anti-French sentiment grow at a time when Chad remains the centerpiece of Paris-led regional efforts to combat jihadist insurgencies. We'll be talking about everywhere from Burkina Faso, where 3 European journalists and scores of civilians were killed in separate attacks on Tuesday that were revealed, to the southern border near Nigeria, where radicals have killed 12 Chadian soldiers. And that's not counting the precarious truce with rebels who had crossed over from Libya, the same who mortally wounded Idriss Déby. How to secure Chad? Can it be done without another 3 decades of strongman rule? Today in the France 24 debate, we're asking about Chad after Idriss Déby. And joining us from the capital, N'Djamena, longtime human rights campaigner, Delphine Djirebe, founder and lead attorney at the Public Interest Law Center. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Activist Abdelkrim Yacoub Koundou Goumi is with us as well, coordinator of the PACT, the political movement.
Yes, PACT.
Welcome back to the show.
Nice to meet you again.
Welcome back as well to Emmanuel Iga, director of the Phobos International Consultancy. How are you?
Very fine. Thank you. Always good to see you.
Good to see you. And Jalal Harshawi, senior fellow at the Geneva-based Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Francois. Glad to be here.
The France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter. Hashtag F24debate. At least 5 killed Tuesday, at least 9, according to activists. There was live ammunition used in the capital and at least one other city. Before we go to our panel, let's go to the Chadian capital and France 24 senior correspondent Cyril Payen. Cyril, how's it looking this Wednesday in N'Djamena?
Well, it was, François, quite a different day as yesterday. We had massive, quite massive, and we could say unexpectedly massive demonstration, especially in the south of the country and in the east of N'Djamena, with, as you said, the casualties of officially 5 dead. The civil society claims that it's 9 dead, but lots of people have been wounded, and especially when the military use live round against protesters, some have been very badly injured. So today was another really day of like a confrontation. It looks like very much like the two sides: the opposition, the civil society, the unions are just watching themselves with the authorities. But there were lots of security around the streets of N'Djamena. It was extremely impressive. It looks like the authority, the new power, and the strongman of Chad doesn't take any chances, and just to try to remain very full in control security-wise. The problem is every day since yesterday, the civil society is announcing the launch of new round of demonstrations, and the very people in the Chadian streets looks like very much they want to take the opportunity after 30 years of Idriss Déby in power to maybe try to grab a bit of freedom and democracy.
Let's listen to the new strongman. There was that televised speech by Mahamat Deby on Tuesday, the 37-year-old promising he would stick to that 18-month transition pledge.
Un conseil national de transition représentative de toutes les provinces et de toutes les forces vives de la nation sera également mis en place pour permettre l'accompagnement législatif de l'action gouvernementale et donner au pays les bases d'une nouvelle constitution.
Cyril Payen, that offer of broad consultations, what have been the reactions?
Well, just to remind that the new strongman of this country just was addressing on national and TV and national radio and a statement to the nation why the authorities were just shooting at demonstrators. So for the people in the street, it looks like very much we have some new uniform, but old habits which are dying hard in the country. So everybody is really expecting some more clearer roadmap and to understand what is going to lie ahead for the future of Chadians. And for now, it's only statements, but this CMT, this transitional military in command in power in Chad, looks like very much they want to govern by decree.
Cyril Payen reporting live from N'Djamena with Pascal Hallier behind the camera. Thank you for that live update. Let's just begin with you, Delphine Girabé. Your reaction to what unfolded on Tuesday, the kind of protest we saw and the reaction from the junta, is it unprecedented?
First of all, let me take this opportunity to present my sympathy to families that have lost their relatives during the demonstrations. It's really their situation that needs to call the conscience of anybody. Having said that, I think that the protest is a result not only of what is occurring now, but it is a fed up of 30 years of suffering. The population of Chad have suffered for 30 years for the Deby system. And now people have come out to say no more of Deby's system. So the CMT has made a coup d'etat by seizing the power and by willing to continue Deby's system. But now the population is up and there is no way to take the same persons and to continue what Deby has left as a legacy. So the protest will go on, will grow until the situation will come to normal, meaning that we come to abide by the Constitution.
Delphine Girabé, what do you answer to people from the outside who look at the situation, say, yeah, but before Deby, there was the bloodthirsty regime of Hissène Habré, there was a strong man before him. It's all that Chadians know.
The Chadians know, the majority of the population know very well what is going on, and that is why they come out to say no more. You know, among people that has come out, you see youths, you see old women, you see children. So it's really everybody that is saying no more of that regime that is synonym of hunger, a synonym of a lack of water, of electricity, of violation of freedoms. Nobody could speak freely, could go and come freely. And despite the repression, what is surprising is despite the repression, people have come out. And it is really moving to see those youths that are going against the militaries with empty-handed. That means that things have changed and nothing can be like under Hissène Habré or under Idriss Déby. Those regimes are over for good.
Abdelkarim Yacoub Kundugumi, you know, it's the question again of what is the culture of a nation. I mean, you're sitting across from Emmanuel, who hails from Nigeria, and yeah, Nigeria has had its share of coups, but it also has had its share of democratic spates in its history since independence. It's less the case for Chad. There hasn't been much civilian rule in its 60 plus years as an independent nation. Why is it different now? Why is it different now?
Before to answer, I want to add my sympathy to all people who are dead and injured these demonstrations. And I want to tell you that this is a new generation. This is new generation who don't accept what the last generation accept between France and all leaders of Chad. It is not because lack of democratic culture of Chadian people, no. When he saw all those young people are demonstrating in front of this brutality and violent soldier, this is the legacy of Idriss Déby's regime. And they are not just fed up of Idriss Déby's regime. They are fed up of this very, we don't understand the position of international community to this regime, support of this regime. They are fed up of all this. So now this new generation...
Yeah, but is it just Deby that they're fed up with? Or is it the fact that you've had opposite Deby during those 3 decades, you had rebellion after rebellion. So it's one warlord or the other, the choice, it seems.
No, this is not just a rebellion, ethnic rebellion or something but for power. No, this rebellion is very specific and different. You can find all the ethnic of Chad in this rebellion. They want to just to minimize the effort of this rebellion to fight this regime of Deby. I think that these people are fed up because they saw that their life, their right and their dream to have a very democratic society and live in this freedom were sacrificed in name of security and stability of the Sahel. So that's why they are saying we must be part of the solution of the Sahel. We cannot sacrifice us for solution of Sahel.
The broader Sahel region, that's the stake. And one of the surprising twists on Tuesday was we saw the same Emmanuel Macron who last Friday attended Idriss Déby's funeral and who lauded Chad's role in fighting insurgencies across the Sahel. Well, there you see him welcoming Congo's president here to Paris Tuesday, Félix Tshisekedi, who holds the rotating chair of the African Union. Macron, in his remarks, condemning, quote, in the strongest possible terms, Tuesday's repression of those demonstrations in Chad's capital.
J'ai apporté mon soutien à l'intégrité et la stabilité du Tchad très clairement à N'Djamena. Je suis pour une transition pacifique, démocratique, inclusive. Je ne suis pas pour un plan de succession. Et la France ne sera jamais aux côtés de celles et ceux qui forment ce projet. Le temps est venu de lancer un dialogue politique national ouvert à tous les Tchadiens. C'est ce qui est attendu aujourd'hui du Conseil militaire de transition et c'est la condition même de notre soutien.
Abdelakrim, you were critical of Emmanuel Macron when you were here last week.
Yes.
Have you changed your mind about him now after hearing those remarks?
Not because I thought that he's trapped by the junta and he tried to find a solution. He said pacific transition. He don't say civil transition. The word is very important. We want that Emmanuel Macron have to be clear. Chadians want a civil transition. And his support for this civil transition is very important for our people. We need a constitutional order. We need a ceasefire between the rebel groups and Forces Armed of Chad. We need to initiate a very inclusive dialogue between all to resolve our problem. So France have to change, and Emmanuel Macron did a first step. We need, and we call Emmanuel Macron to make another effort to help us to find solution, but not support this junta.
Emmanuel Iga, were you surprised at the strong words we heard from the French president so soon after attending again Idriss Déby's funeral in?
Well, I think President Macron had no other choice after the Friday outing in N'Djamena, which you talked about, which was, let me say, interpreted as a kind of support to the new regime that everybody actually sees as another military regime. There are 15 generals in charge of the government in Chad. You know, I come from Nigeria, where we have a history of coup d'etat. We know what a military regime is. That is a military regime. So they may elect some people, appoint some people into government, like the prime minister and all that, but we know the military are behind, pulling the strings. Now, after that Friday outing, I think Macron was attentive to the reactions. This rejection of his, the way he talked in Chad, and he had to just send a signal to the youths, the opposition, and the civil society of Chad. He seized the opportunity, I think, at the right time to send that message. Now we want to see him make good on the commitments he has made through these statements. I think Abdel Karim is right. There's a trick in the words he used. He said pacific transition, inclusive, quite right, pacific, and Abdel Karim is saying he should have used the word civil transition. And I think the two are not incompatible. The transition should be pacific and civil.
I mean, he
That
said,
means the
we heard him
military
say,
should
I'm
stop.
in favor of a democratic, peaceful, inclusive transition.
Exactly, peaceful. So let it be a civil, inclusive, and peaceful, pacific transition. That means in trying to handle this mass uprising of youths, opposition, and civil society in Chad, the military should stop using live bullets, live rounds on the population. That is not acceptable. You don't shoot at youths that are just asking for democracy. Can you imagine a Chadian who is 30 years old today never saw any other person as president in his country than Idriss Déby, late Idriss Déby. And now all that the military have had to offer them after the death of this long dictator, is to bring his own son, just 37 years, already a 4-star general. And so I think the youths have understood that if they don't seize this opportunity, this is a window of opportunity for them. They are looking at what happened in Mali with the mass uprisings of the youths, what happened in Sudan with the mass uprisings of the youths. If they allow these military guys to settle well, then it will be another round of a long-time military regime. These military guys are very, very clever. They say, well, we're going to be there for 18 months, but they are very good at not keeping their promises. And we saw what also happened in Felix Tshisekedi's own country, in DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. His own family has suffered a lot from opposition, in the opposition against, Mobutu, then Kabila and all that. And he's now president, right? When Kabila, father, Joseph Kabila, Laurent Désiré Kabila took power and he was also assassinated, then the son took over and people thought he was just going to be there for a short time. He ended up being there for 18 good years. So the Chadians understand this and they think there is a big risk that if they don't keep the pressure on with the support of the international community, particularly France, which is the closest ally to Chad, then they might be in for another round of 30 years or more of Mohamed Deby. So it's, I think, the reasoning they have that is motivating these mass demonstrations.
All right. Could Chad become another dynasty from father to son? Will it be like Sudan, where there is right now power sharing between civilians and the military, or like Libya, where after the strongman came chaos? We'll be asking our panel when we come back. You're watching the France 24 debate. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. On Tuesday, we saw live ammunition used on pro-democracy protesters in Chad's capital and elsewhere, protesting against the coup that followed the death of longtime strongman Idriss Déby, who succumbed to his wounds in battle against a rebellion northwest of the capital. We're talking about it with longtime human rights campaigner Delphine Girabet, founder and lead attorney at the Public Interest Law Center. Thank you for joining us again from the Chadian capital. Activist Abdelkrim Yacoub Koundougoumi is with us here as well, coordinator of the PACT political movement. Political scientist Emmanuel Iga is the director of Phobos International Consultancy, and Jalal Harshawi, senior fellow at the Geneva-based Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. But before I turn to you, Jalal, just want to play a clip earlier. Cyril Payen spoke to one Chadian opposition leader, Podi Jimé Bichara, who noted Emmanuel Macron's change in tone since last week.
Je pense que la France elle-même, elle a compris qu'elle a fait un faux pas. Et ce que le président Macron a dit hier, et qui s'est traduit par un communiqué conjoint de la RD Congo et de la France, c'est déjà comment dire ça, c'est déjà un bon rattrapage.
Jalal Harshawi, when you look at this from afar, how do you feel as though France is reading the situation, particularly in view of the fact that Macron's got his hands full, what with jihadists he's facing elsewhere in the Sahel, and of course the situation in Libya?
Well, in Libya, there's been a quiet that has prevailed more or less for the last 9 months. But of course, a lot of the debate has been devoted to the continued presence of foreign mercenaries, and President Macron himself has spoken about this quite a bit since last year, and he usually focuses on a very real set of mercenaries that happen to be on the side of Turkey, which itself has a presence on the side of Tripoli, the western part of Libya. So you do have thousands of Syrian mercenaries that support that particular faction, because I would like to remind you that Libya, although quiet, is still divided. But there's another side in Libya that usually French policymakers and decision makers never speak about in terms of their own violation of international law and a sort of crime which consists in utilizing foreign mercenaries. So you have on the side of Field Marshal Haftar, who's based in the eastern part of Libya, you do have thousands of Russian mercenaries to this day, and you have also probably more than 1,500 Sudanese mercenaries. And you've had for a long time the very Chadian mercenaries that in fact had been rebels based in Libya for years, and that the world had forgotten about. But
Because that's what I wanted to ask you about. You have these fact rebels, the ones that mortally wounded Idriss Déby. They had been in Libya, some say with the militias from Misrata, but with the situation calming down in Libya, have they been... Is that what makes it they've gone back home?
Well, they were initially supported by Misrata, which is on the side of the continued revolution, the Islamists, and all this revolutionary side, if you will. But they had changed sides during the period very gradually between 2017 and 2019. 2019 is a key year because that's the moment when Field Marshal Haftar decided to conduct his offensive on the capital, Tripoli. And to do that, he used a lot of foreign help. And in that context, he actually utilized the combat help of those Chadian rebels that happened to be on Libyan soil. So there's definitely utilization of the very Chadian rebels that have been on the headlines over the last couple of weeks. And of course, as I said, France feels that it is in an awkward situation because it has always been partial to Haftar, hence the silence that I've been underscoring. And of course, Chad is always a very important, vital strategic interest for France. So what happened this month has been really the worst case scenario where what you support in one country crosses the border and causes mayhem and destabilization in another country where you are supposed to preserve a form of stability. So this is really all awkward, and of course there's been a lot of denial on the part of whoever supports Field Marshal Haftar, this very controversial commander in Libya.
Yeah, so as you say, you mentioned 2019. Chadians remember that we could show the map first where the FACT rebels crossed over from Libya and suffered those heavy casualties in that battle that cost Idriss Déby his life. We'll try to show those where that took place in a bit. But the fighting, a reminder of 2019 when the French army helped defeat rebels of the UFR who had also crossed over from Libya. I want to bring in, at this point in our discussion, Delphine Girabet, because you just heard Jalel Harshawi mention how your friends in one country are not necessarily your friends in another. How much of this is France's making?
France is a former Chad is a former French colony, and as such, there is a privileged relationship between France and Chad. What President Macron have said yesterday is important, but I think that there is a further step for France to take to make it concrete, and the further step to take is to show interest to the population of Chad who is asking for a civilian transition. So it will take to have the CMT leave power to go to the military compound, and to have a civilian committee start to thinking on how the all-inclusive dialogue should be organized as soon as possible to be able to establish a government that can
and Delphine,
handle urgent.
Would it be more
Yes.
realistic to have an arrangement like in neighboring Sudan, where you have a transition that includes both civilians and the military?
It could be a solution, but the main and important thing in Chad is that it will not take all those people that are implicated in the system and who has a criminal record. So there is a need to have a clear profile of who could manage the transition. We need really to do things differently, to do things like to avoid the previous situation to occur again. We need people that are competent, that could have all necessary technical skills to be able to manage the transition. And there is no way to have a dynasty, to have like a family gather thing, while Chad is a country with several ethnic groups, with several clans, and we cannot abide by family, by clans, or by anything else than a democratic process that could allow anybody that comply with the democratic principles to be able to be part of the managing group of the transition. So it's important, and France should take that role seriously, because what happens on Friday shows clearly that the populations already know that what is happening in Chad is supported by France, and France should take the responsibility to change things in the positive way.
Abdelkarim Yacoub Kondongumi, you're saying something slightly different from what Delphine is saying, in that you're saying that in this transition period, you need to be inclusive and have civilians, the civil society, the military, but also the rebels. You made that call for a ceasefire. So you're saying the rebels should also be at the table.
When you want to resolve the Chadian problem, we have to put all of the actors in the field and discuss together. You cannot exclude some of them and discuss with others. Before Deby, we said to Deby that rebels want dialogue. Civil society want inclusive dialogue. Political party call for inclusive dialogue. And diaspora call for dialogue to avoid the situation where we are right now. But I want to complete what Delphine said. The problem in Chad, the main problem of Chad, it's not the Chadian, but the army of Chad. The army of Chad is a state in the state. They have more power than our civil institution. So how can we work together to ensure that very peacefully to remove them and give the power to civilian and our institution? That is the more challenge we have to do. So how to do it? I agree with Delphine, but I want to try the Malian solution. The Malian solution is similar to Chadian solution, because international community are very attached in the security of the Sahel. So we need the army who continue to fight against this. So we said that if we have a mixed transition, lead by a civil, but complete by the military, so we can do it together. So we can ensure international community in our involvement to the fight against terrorists, and then lead a civil transition and build a very stable institution and very peaceful and develop our country and go to the very good election.
Yeah, you bring up what is in fact the third front, if you will, which is fighting jihadist insurgencies, completely independent of the anti-junta protests. On Tuesday, we saw a lot of attacks to groups attributed to either Boko Haram or Islamic State-affiliated insurgents in the Lake Chad region. 12 Chadian soldiers killed Tuesday in a firefight near Lake Chad, while radicals slaughtered 13 civilians in a village some 40 kilometers from Bull. Over the border, by the way, in Nigeria, there were deadly attacks near Maine Soroa, that's in Borno State. This amid reports of insurgents laying siege to Gaydam in Yobe State. So this is what's happening south of the capital, of Chad's capital right now. Again, when you look at that, do you say to yourself, if you're, and remembering that France and the US have forces in N'Djamena fighting these insurgents, do you say to yourself at this point in time, Emmanuel Iga, that the first priority is stability, is taking on these insurgents?
Well, that priority has been there for the past years. And in the case of Nigeria, Chad, Niger, and actually Cameroon, those countries surrounding Lake Chad, there has been some kind of attempt to have a cooperation, a regional cooperation to fight.
If there's instability in N'Djamena, what does it mean for Nigerians?
Well, it's not going to mean well. It's I think most of the countries in this sub-region had been actually, in spite of whatever one can say about Deby, had been actually relying very much on his, let me say, military sense. He came from the rebel background, and he actually promoted himself to Marshal before he died. So he's somebody that had a strong military sense, and which he used very effectively in combating the terrorism. even Nigeria was somehow like looking up to him. So it's a big issue now that he's no more there. At the time, Nigerians feel their army is in disarray. You were talking of the attacks in Borno, Yobe, more in the northeast, but actually Boko Haram carried out deadly attacks on communities in Niger State,
In Nigeria, yeah.
close to 2 hours drive to the federal capital. And they actually hoisted the flag of Boko Haram in these communities. So it's now a situation whereby I think the international community is right to emphasize the need for transition in Chad with stability. Whatever role the military will play will be to guarantee the stability necessarily in Chad, which is good for Nigeria, good for the Sahel, etc. But just like Abdel Karim said, does it mean the military in Chad must lead that transition? That's another question. So the military can be there, they play their role, but probably there is a different scenario where they can play their role and a civilian in Chad is actually driving the transition. I think that's what they should be talking about now. So Nigeria actually now is not really in position to carry out the kind of role that Idriss Déby
Well, we saw Muhammadu Buhari in a phone call on Tuesday with the new U.S. Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, call for stepped-up help. Here's the front cover of the Daily Trust daily newspaper. Buhari seeks U.S. help, wants the U.S. military to relocate its Africa command to the continent from its current headquarters in Stuttgart, Germany. So here we are talking about France's role in Chad, and you have this call for help from Buhari to the Americans. What does that tell you right now?
It's just wonderful. The Americans had been in Nigeria right from the time of Goodluck Jonathan to try to support the regional coalition against Boko Haram. Nigeria was together with Chad, Niger, and Cameroon. They had the regional cooperation supported by France, America, and actually the UK. That didn't seem to have worked. I think there's a real problem with, just like Abdul Karim was saying, there was a problem with the Chadian army. There is a different kind of problem with the Nigerian army, which is like it's not really operational as it should be. An army that was a great army in West Africa before. So I don't know how much change the American presence can make if the Nigerian army itself is not really determined to take the bull of Boko Haram by the horns. It can't do anything.
Jalil Harchawi, your topic of predicament is your topic is Libya, and we saw how there the West ousted Gaddafi, declared victory, and left. When you look at what's happening now in Chad and what the future relation may be with the former colonial power, what's your thoughts?
Well, the paradox with Chad, as your other guests have said so far, is that the rebel group that we talked about managed to kill the person, Idriss Déby, but the system, the Deby system, is to this day still in place. And obviously the hope of nations like France primarily, but also the United States to a lesser degree, their hope is to somehow preserve the same system for the time being. Nobody knows how long the time being in question is going to last, but there hasn't been any collapse so far. Maybe that scenario will materialize, but we are not yet in a Libya 2011 kind of scenario. Obviously, the similarity is after 3 or 4 decades, when the system of power is so personalized, when the thing actually crumbles down, then the state itself, because the institutions were not really impersonal, they were actually personalized, they evaporate and you end up with a lot of dysfunction, which means a civil conflict. I think that would be the parallel, but I think it's too early to say anything like that.
Very briefly, because we're out of time, Delphine Girabet, is that something you fear, that Chad could become another Libya?
Another Somali maybe also, because if there is not a proper transition put in place, then even within the what we can call the army, because you know that as it was said, army in Chad is a problem. It is not a national army. It was Mr. Deby's army, and this is the army we are talking about. So if nothing is done to put a civilian transition in place and to let what the army is to be able to solve their problem and to have an international community, I am thinking of the UN take care of the security situation within Chad. We are likely to become like Somali. Libya is getting slowly out of its crisis, but in Chad it will be more complicated. And what I was saying is that there is two things. The dialogue needs to be all inclusive, but the committee that should manage the situation to bring the dialogue, that should put together a transition government, should be composed of civilian technical people that has no criminal background.
All right, well,
So
that will be the
that's
final.
what
That'll be
I
the
was
final.
saying.
Yeah, that'll be our final word. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We hear your call, Delphine Girabé. I want to thank you so much for joining us from N'Djamena. I want to thank as well Abdel Kerim Yacoub Kundungumi, Emmanuel Iga, Jalal Hirshawi. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.